So, we have a new operator coming to Rainbow Six Siege that's being described as Castle and Irene but on attack. On top of that, the SiegeX reveal is just on the horizon. Soon, a new chapter will be written in Siege's history, and I can only sit here wondering how much of an impact it'll actually have on the game in its already divided community. The reveals only left me with more questions than answers as well, so my hope is that this video will be my attempt at cataloging my questions, concerns, and interests about SiegeX and the new operator coming to Siege, so that when Year 10 Season 2 comes out, I can revisit this topic and discuss what changed and which of my expectations were hit. First, let's just get this out of the way. Am I actually excited for Year 10 in SiegeX? Absolutely. There's so much I'm looking forward to from this year that even if SiegeX doesn't add that much to the game, there should be plenty to love and enjoy about the game still. I've already started to plan out attacks based on the new op in Season 1 and what ops might work with Rora, wondering what maps they'll be absolutely evil on, and wondering in what ways defense can counteract and interact with the gadget. I'm genuinely excited about this year of Siege so far. This preemptive enthusiasm led to a lot of questions though, and a lot of concerns. I want this to succeed, and I want Siege to feel like it can come back from even the lowest of seasons that inevitably happen, which is my concern about season to season content and how that's going to affect later seasons. Year 10 Season 1 has very few new additions to Siege. I'd even go so far as to say basically nothing, other than a new op is being added content-wise, even if I'm fine with that. But then, SiegeX presumably needs to come out swinging to justify the lack of content for a few months, and let's just run with that scenario for now. SiegeX releases. It's a huge update. Sweeping mechanical changes with new ones introduced, we've got a whole new op, maybe a whole new map. And then, how long does that last? Is SiegeX the rest of the year? What are we prepping for after that? Based on how the Year 10 roadmap is looking at the moment, that's literally it. We have the entire rest of the year with the content SiegeX is bringing in to enjoy, which again, I'm not entirely against that. But how are later seasons going to shape up? Is that even gonna matter? Like, we've gotten an entire evolution of Siege coming in, and it's a huge change, meaning we'll be hitting new metas, new destruction most likely, sweeping map changes I can imagine. An entire year to get used to that like it's a whole new game? That sounds awesome. But I also still have this creeping issue in the back of my mind about the next season, the follow-up to SiegeX. I'm more concerned about the first season of SiegeX's content cycle in the eyes of the community and how that's going to affect Siege going forward than I am about how much I'll enjoy SiegeX by itself. Because if there's anyone who's good at ruining Siege, it's kind of the community. Speaking of the community, I do have some concerns about community engagement regarding the new rep system coming into Year 10 Season 1. Very minor concern, but like, the system feels like it'd be perfect for people to make a service to boost your rep and get back into playing regular content just to be toxic again, right? Is that just me? Another thing about the community that I have a concern about, and might already be seeing, is that people are going to spend a lot of time complaining that Siege was better before the update, which is something that has happened in other instances for other reasons, in other seasons for other reasons, but in this case, there's no going back after this. Once they make this upgrade, we can safely assume there is no let's just revert the change. I'm not worried about wanting to go back to OG Siege. I'm worried about people pathologizing SiegeX because it doesn't feel like Siege. The evolution of Siege I'm worried about the most is the evolution of the community in a negative way, meaning a lot of complaints that feel excessively negative or unwilling to accept that Siege needs to change in one way or another for the better. I have to say this though before I continue. You cannot like the direction Siege is going. You can quit Siege at any time. You can give valid criticism and opinions on a game that struggles every year to not have some kind of issue or community dividing change. You could like the original Siege or miss the original dev team or whatever. That's fine. My complaint, to make it clear, is that I do not want to be hearing people tear down Ubisoft, who is attempting to change the game and try new things and bring the community together to their best ability. I don't want to see people talk about how SiegeX is how Siege dies because Ubisoft doesn't care. We can disagree on changes, sure, but it does nothing for the game or the discussion to sit here and complain about the game dying or being not worth your time if that's your only critique. Okay, sorry. Rant over about the community. Let's get to another concern. This upcoming season, Year 10 Season 1, introduces an operator named Aurora that has a fun looking loadout as well as a gadget that looks like it'll synergize well with a number of operators on attack. That gadget, however, puts Aurora in the perfect situation to end up like Castle, as in, with the wrong placement, you can very easily mess with your team in all the wrong ways. Can it be played around? Of course, just like a castle with bad placements. But even then, the frustration between the player placing the barricades and the teammates dealing with them will no doubt come to a head during a clutch. The Reaper Mark II looks fun, but I'm a lover of machine pistols. I just hope it's not going to be too insane to control or it'll fall to the wayside for the Gish. And let's be real, that'd be sad. Dynamic Matchmaking 1.0 coming out is kind of cool, but I'm not sure who exactly it's built for. Maybe to push people with better ping into lobbies that generally have better ping across every player in the match? It's a tad confusing, but we'll have to see the impact of that being introduced since I don't know how exactly it could cause any issues. Unless it just throws every player into worse lobbies consistently by accident. That wouldn't happen though, I'm sure. Okay, well, that's all of the concerns that I can think of. I did get caught up making the script along the way for personal reasons, but I just wanted to get this out in time before the launch of Year 10 and the SiegeX reveal. Yeah, that didn't happen. As is my luck and my style, I am yet again late for 2 deadlines in a row. Now, 3 actually, both for different reasons. The first one is because the script you're hearing me read off right now was meant to be done before the reveal of SiegeX and the release of Year 10 Season 1. Now that both have passed and I've had some hands-on time with SiegeX's new mode, it's only fair that I update this video to be longer than I'd like. Let's start off with the updates towards my Aurora section. Do I think she still has the same issues that Castle does? Yes, absolutely. As someone who is still learning her and seeing other people learn her, the amount of times you can just easily mess up and put the panel up in the wrong spot is so easy. It can just happen. And the worst part is that unlike Castle, you can't just easily remove them. My concern with the sidearm was also kind of correct. I don't think it needs to be changed too much, and I don't want the SMG-11 to have a contender for best sidearm, but it's a little sad that I'd prefer to use the SMG-12 over the Reaper any day of the week. That's not to say it's all bad, however, because Aurora is actually quite good. On some maps, she's even quite oppressive, despite some general targeting issues with her gadget, which UB is tuning even up to now. Aurora does come with quite a few positives, including the fact that her gadget is useful on every single map in the game, even on sites with a lot of rotates that make shutting down doorway access seem meaningless. This is because the less unpredictability that can occur while you're executing on site, the more likely you'll be able to hold Piku's advantage as well as easily create situations for the enemy to tunnel vision. She also benefits from the player being flexible in their playstyle as it allows for roam denial, post-plant denial, and much more. A hybrid playstyle will be just as effective and annoying for defense as a single target approach with the operator. Aurora excels when the player has an understanding of how the defense must move around the gadget and around the map even from a surface layer point of view. Going beyond that though, the gadget benefits from players and teams willing to break apart the map even a little bit. Destructibility and Aurora is a surprisingly effective combo when the enemy has to account not only for delayed retaking of the site, but also the multiple angles that are being played at once to throw them off. A good Aurora can work with and without her team to create openings, create space, and make the defender's life a living hell even if it's only for a few seconds. That said, there are some more specific negatives. Though not inherently the character's fault, the targeting system for the gadget is still a little wonky. It's a bit hard to use when multiple doors are in line of sight on top of wanting to move fast so you don't get your head taken off. Trying to use the gadget on the door on the far side can sometimes lead to me placing the gadget on the door in front of me, and that makes it harder on me and my team. They did recently fix the issue with shooting the gadget above hatches, but sometimes it still takes a bit to actively recognize you want to target the door if it allows you. Another negative are Aurora's options for secondary gadgets. I can see the appeal and the use for a smoke grenade, but it feels like she needs one more type of utility to enjoy the freedom that her own gadget lets her have. Maybe explore giving her a hard breach on top of a normal breach and the smoke grenades. I feel like that adds another layer to the gadgets given to her and the playstyles allowed, but I'm also thinking of more interactions with the door itself. Finally, can we fix the recoil on the sidearm? Even a little tiny tweak of the recoil so that it doesn't feel like I'm trying to fight the SMG-12's smaller brother. Even saying that, it insults the SMG-12 because I can control that for the most part, but the Reaper, I can't control it whatsoever. Maybe buff the recoil so it's not as bad, but reduce the damage a little bit. It's already slow firing and I don't want it to be a useless weapon, but I also don't see it being used a whole lot as it is, which I can only describe as disappointing because it has such a cool ass name. Last but not least, let's discuss SiegeX. I'm not not going to go over the reveal or anything, but I do have a few things to talk about regarding the beta and how I feel the changes are represented based on the game modes available. As of the typing of this script, the beta has finished and the feedback for it has been put out there in droves from the community. For those that don't know, the beta officially consisted of only one game mode, that of Duel Front, a 6v6 objective-based mode where some of your team attempts to capture 3 points sequentially and the other part of your team attempts to defend your own 3 points from the enemy's attackers. It takes place on a much larger map than normal, you have access to a mixed pool of operators on both attack and defense, and you're much stronger when in down but not out. Actually, that last part is just bad balancing or unintended. Maybe, I'm not entirely sure. Either way, it was extremely frustrating to deal with. Simply put, Duel Front is a game mode that attempts to freshen up Siege, and so far the attempt is divisive, to say the least. Initially, I saw only praise for the game mode, but as time went on, I saw the opinions become mixed, and the community has yet, from my point of view, to come to a solid opinion overall. For myself, the opinions varied per play session, and I wasn't exactly hyped about it by the end of my time playing the beta. My first play session was very negative and left a sour taste in my mouth, but I had blamed it on the time of day I decided to play it and figured I would try again before it ended. My second play session was a bit better, but left me with mixed opinions overall. The gameplay felt weird, the map wasn't very fun to traverse, and it all felt very boring. My final play session left me with mostly positive feelings about the game mode, but I'm not going to go out of my way to play it solo pretty much ever. I was not having fun on defense, even when I was keeping the objectives locked down and never letting the enemy manually capture it once. Notice I say manually, because there were secondary objectives on the map that, once captured, allowed the team to expedite their capture progress. Stack that with the fact that if the enemy team wasn't able to make any progress or very little, and your own team was making a lot of progress, your own objective would start to decay, meaning that the default end of the capture bar for the objective would start to move up. So imagine the objective decaying so much that the enemy team only had to take 2 slots instead of 3 on the progress bar. Then they complete the side objective because your team is so focused on their own main objective. You basically just lost your defensive side for free for little to no effort. This is where my main gripes with the mode come into play. It just feels too empty. It doesn't feel very fun to run around in, and it feels like I basically do nothing except for every half a minute or more, which could be due to the long spawn timer. My god, the spawn timer is so long. It's 30 seconds long, which is insane for a game that is already filled with a lot of downtime in the primary game mode. You sit there after having successfully defended the site for the 3rd time and you just wait. You don't need to prep even more of the site. You might have some more gadgets to throw or replace, but you just don't do anything until the attackers respawn again and try again. And again and again. Obviously, if there's some back and forth during the defending, this wouldn't be such a bad thing, at least not entirely. But in all of my play sessions, not once was it ever a back and forth like I would have wanted. It was either I defended it so well that the attackers would never manually capture the site without a secondary objective, or the attackers are cracked mega players who are indestructible and we lose within minutes. There were never any in-betweens. Never any situation where I felt like the game could go either way. In fact, in a moment where I had thought it might be a balanced or mixed game, people immediately left within minutes after having died 2 or 3 times. Truly, this game mode is just a longer version of normal Siege with the way people leave, which is kind of my problem with how Siege X was presented. We're shown a bunch of new changes and shifts in Siege, but are forced to experience them in the new game mode and not in a normal match, which is where I'd want to experience these changes, since Duel Front is really just not the best place to see these changes. I get it too. I get why Duel Front is the thing you'd want to showcase in the beta as the only game mode you can officially access. Yet that right there is the key word. Officially, you were only allowed to access the Duel Front game mode, but unofficially you could access custom matches and look at all the maps and ops, as well as, I believe, play custom games with friends in the beta. But then why not just let us experience that? I don't think Duel Front is a good showcase for these changes, and I also just felt a little disappointed knowing that I wouldn't get to fully experience them all yet. I suppose though, in the end, it's because it's to generate hype in some way, and it just feels wrong. Either way, I think that's everything I have to say in this weird hybrid video. I might have missed a few concerns or questions I had when I first saw the reveal trailers, but honestly, I think this is good enough as is, and I'll come back to revisit this topic when Siege X officially launches. If there's anything you're unsure about, or have some impressions of Aurora, feel free to tell me about it in the comments. Twitch.tv/Duskaroo, Siege every Tuesday. I'll see you all next time.